What's up, guys? Reggie here, back at it again. And as you can see from the title, is buying expensive fragrances worth buying nowadays? And this is my honest, humble take. So I've been in the game for quite some time now, and I've seen so many things. And I was just actually thinking about this for a few days, and I decided to just make this a video. So yeah, here you have it. So the number one thing is the dupe brand factor, which is cheap and quality fragrances. We live in times, man, where, like I mentioned before, I wouldn't even be surprised if we get some sort of fee for walking or breathing air. Like, just things are just so expensive, wherever, pretty much wherever you go. Yeah, some places are going to be cheaper and some places are going to be like a whole lot more expensive. But when it comes down to vanity stuff like that, that us humans have, smelling good it's one of them. And you have the dupe fragrances, well, the dupe brands, who pretty much all they do is they get inspired. If we don't want to say that they copy the designers or the niche brands, so they'll do that. So they'll take that in their and they'll bottle, and they'll rename it or just name it something else, and they'll release it. And yeah, it's not going to be the same exact scent as the original that they're copying, but it's going to be pretty close or somewhat close. And in terms of, the whole quality of the fragrance itself. So that is one of those things that, yeah, for your pocket, it's a really good thing to have those dupe fragrances. And that, like, it's another thing why it even hurts the designer brands, because they really do hate the fact that you have, people spending $40 on a Middle Eastern brand that is mimicking their scent. And they're like, yo, like, they just hate that, even if they don't want to say that publicly. But of course they do, because the also another thing is the influencer content creators influence into buying everything, basically making that a trend, where just fragrances become a really big trend for a few days or even a few weeks. And most of these are mostly Middle Eastern brands that are being promoted this way, because um, they don't have the same way of, advertising their fragrances and stuff like that. For example, like those designers like at Macy's, or just, stuff like that. But yeah, that is another really big thing, where you have so many options to choose from, where people nowadays, they smell this and they think that this is the fragrance that it's like its own thing, when they don't know that this was inspired by, of course, Jean Paul Gaultier, Ultramar, and Le Beau Le Parfum, which is, one of those things that tells you, they'll think that this is the most amazing smelling fragrance, and it only costs like around like 60 or 70 bucks at max. And then they'll go to Macy's and they'll see, oops, my bad, and then they'll see a fragrance like this. They'll see a fragrance like this for almost 200, and then they'll also see this one right here, over 200. Of course, a 6.7 ounce, which is the biggest bottle. They'll see that, and they'll probably smell it, and they will be like, it's almost like the same quality. So yeah, and then that's why they end up not really buying them, because of how expensive pretty much the fragrances are. And yeah, and then another thing is the versatility. Spending less on dupe brands means you can have more money to spend on those other fragrances. For example, if you have $300 and you see this bottle of Creed Aventus, and you spend all your money there, right? So you're not going to have anything left. And then, for example, if you buy Club de Nuit, which is a good clone of course, Creed Aventus, that only costs like $30 to $40, which means that you have so much money to buy so many fragrances, and your collection grows, your versatility, increases, having so many fragrances for different types of wearing occasions. And yeah, it's like one of those things that it's just like a really big thing when it comes down to having so many fragrances. And like I said, we live in times where a lot of people don't even care about that anymore. They say, hey, if I have $100, I can buy this designer fragrance, but guess what? With these $100, I can buy 3 Middle Eastern dupes that will give me more versatility. And that is another thing that why people are just more interested in Middle Eastern brands, because you'll be surprised if I told you that a lot of the people in the recent years, they've been getting into the fragrance world because of these type of brands. Afnan, you have Latafa, you have so many like Maison Alhambra, you have so many dupe brands that are getting people in the community, just in the world of fragrances, and it's just a really beautiful thing. But of course, I have talked about why, the way that they promote everything, it hurts like the fragrance world and stuff like that, the community, and how it's like dying. But that's a check another video that I have if you're interested in that type of topic. I won't really get into that right now, but yeah, that's like another thing. It is really beautiful because it brings more people and to the community, and more people just watch videos and they consume them, and that is really good because compared to like years ago, so many people have left the whole fragrance world because of all those trendiness that the creators make of making a scent a trend, and making some other a trend in a bad way of hating on them. But yeah, and then another thing that I have is the satisfaction of owning a high-end brand, which is designer or niche, it doesn't really matter, right? So what do I mean by that? You have the psychological / emotional dopamine effect, where when you buy, for a lot of people, for example, buying Jean Paul Gaultier Le Mans Elixir, like this, for them, they can show it off on their social media or their friends or just family, and they're like, yeah, I have this high end designer fragrance that smells really good and lasts forever, right? And they will not hesitate, and they will not basically fold to buy something like this, even though it smells really good. They'll be like, yeah, that's like pirated, or that's a copy, that's just a pirate scent, that's just a knockoff. You can call it whatever you really want, but you can't really deny of the quality that a lot of these dupe fragrances have. And like I said before, they're gonna be similar, too similar, or not that similar, but they are gonna be in that type of range, right? So they're it's like the accuracy pretty much depends on the brand, but at the end of the day, no matter how close they smell, the quality and the you can tell the way that they were made, they're more smoother, and they can't really the dupes can really compare to that. And if someone tells you that that, I don't know, Rayhan Elixir is the same as this one, especially if they're those big creators, they're just lying to you. They're just using that because, I don't know, maybe that was in the contract. But yeah, you can tell the difference between the fragrances like night and day. Yeah, of course, one of them is going to be rougher, one of them is going to feel more aggressive, and the other one is going to feel more more relaxed, more smooth, and you know what that means, that tends to be always the original that they're copying, which is of course the designer fragrance. But yeah, guys, now the final thing that I want to say is a lot of us have some sort of personal attachment to a certain fragrance, or a emotional bond, or some sort of personal anecdote that always reminds of a certain time when we wore that. For example, in my case, um, this fragrance, whenever I smell it, it always reminds me of my brother's wedding. When he got married, I remember I had just bought this fragrance, like, not pretty much like a few weeks ago, before that, and I wore the crap out of this fragrance in his wedding, and it was my scent of that day. And I remember I probably sprayed this bad boy like 20 times because I wasn't gonna pretty much have any time to be able to spray any more fragrance. So what I did, I oversprayed, and it lasted, and I smelled beautifully. By the way, I don't recommend you to overspray a fragrance all over your clothes. Why? Because if it's like a yellow type of oil, it's gonna stain it if it's a light color, and on top of that, it's also gonna pretty much, if it's a potent, if it's like something like this or something very sweet, it's just gonna pretty much annoy people. But since this is fresh and inoffensive, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, like I said, you have that personal attachment, emotional bond. Um, but yeah, then there's, like I said, some of us that we don't really care if it's higher in price, like 2 to 3 times, we're still gonna keep on buying it. Why? Because once again, we have that emotional bondage with that scent. But yeah, it's been pretty much it. I think I hit everything. And like always, if you got to this part of the video, thank you so much, and let me know your whole thoughts on this topic, because I really love reading comments, and I love replying back to you guys. I love seeing the engagement, the connection. It also motivates me even more to keep on doing this, which is that I really just love, and this is my passion. But yeah, guys, it's been Reggie, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.